Hello everyone, at 1995 here in the video game fanfiction plot with a new story for you all. It is called Grey, and I do hope you enjoy this video, and remember, I do not own Transformers Prime series and Fullmetal Alchemist series or the story. I give full credit to its author MessyArtwok on DeviantArt. Now onto the story, Grey. For the Elric brothers, everything seemed normal. Being called back to report to Colonel Mustang was the norm. But the events to follow their return would prove to provide an adventure that either brother could ever have been able to predict. Because of an ancient device of unknown origin. The brothers will quite possibly face the biggest threat they've ever known. By MessyArtwok. Chapter I: The Ground Never Tread. After so many years of hearing the story told to me, it's hard to imagine that grandfather and his brother had been through so much. I was but a small child when he first told me of the miraculous adventures he and his brother had experienced, adventures so amazing that most other folk would have never believed his words. But I did. I believed every word, every story that he ever told me. But it wasn't until one day, one faithful afternoon that he lay in bed ill in late autumn, that he spoke a new story. A tale about peace, war, honor, loyalty, and friendship. A story so unbelievable, that regrettably to this day, I still wonder if it is in fact true. Grandfather, a famous alchemist, always told me, humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something of equal value must be lost. But at that moment, when he laid in his gowns, gazing up at me, he unwove a tale about events in which he gave nothing but gained everything. He told me of a time that he had never told anyone. Not even my grandma Winry. As the sun dipped low over the horizon, and the wind yipped and howled, two solitary figures stood erect, waiting for the train to pull into the desolate country station. Though these figures at first glance were calm and tranquil with the rain beating against them, they were anything but. For they were the famous Elric brothers. Watching through his blonde, rain-soaked hair, Edward sighed in relief as the train pulled into the station slowly, grinding to a halt with its familiar mechanical hiss. Gazing up at his brother, Edward nodded, grabbing one of two bags before climbing aboard, not once saying a word. Not long afterwards, the train sped along noisily down the track, chugging full steam ahead towards the capital city. Seated sideways on the familiar wooden seats, Ed stared out into the blackness. His mind still plunged with the thoughts of the ever-elusive Sorcerer's Stone. Brother. Pulled away from his thoughts, Edward Elric looked up to meet the gaze of a suit of armor staring back, a suit that was in fact, his brother. Looking at his hands that lay at rest in his lap, Alphonse Elric sighed. "Why do you suppose Lieutenant Colonel Mustang wants to see us so urgently?" Pausing in his thoughts for but a moment, Ed groaned with a nonchalant shrug. "How should I know? Best way I figure it, is that he's just being his overbearing, snooping self." Laughing only half-heartedly, Alphonse looked away, then shrugged. "Maybe. But from his message, he sounded as though we were urgently requested." Laughing loudly back, Ed grinned. "Please, Mustang always makes more out of a situation than what's necessary. I'm telling you, Al, our going back to the capital is probably for stupid reasons and stupid reasons only." Pulling the watch from his pocket, gazing at the lion on its cover, Edward sighed. "Still, I hate it that we're expected to come running every time the military summons." Gripping the watch, Ed looked up, meeting his brother's gaze. "It's not fair. We were so close to finding a new lead to the stone when all this had to happen. Whatever is happening better be worth losing a Sorcerer's Stone. They should have been here by now. Usually the trains don't run this late." Looking down at his watch, Mace Hughes, a member of the military's intelligence division, huffed tiredly. "There's no telling how much grief Mustang is going to give me now that we're already a half an hour late." Chuckling, the tall, broad-shouldered state alchemist Alex Louis Armstrong smiled. "No need to grow weary, Hughes. I'm sure the Colonel will be understanding and quite dismissive of the situation. It could not be helped." Looking away, Hughes huffed loudly. "I take it you will be the one telling Mustang why we're late then. I'd rather he burn your behind than mine." Just then, The whistle of a steam engine filled the station as another train slowly came to a grinding halt at one of the unloading platforms. And sure enough, young Edward Elric was one of the first to jump off, followed much more casually by his younger brother, Edward and Alphonse Elric. Suddenly, the two young teens were overwhelmed by the powerful and undaunting grip of Major Armstrong. Laughing sheepishly, Al sighed. "It's a pleasure to see you again too, Major." Other than squawking in a sort of choking gibberish and wheezing, Ed didn't say much of anything. But you could see it plain as day by the look on his face that he was anything but amused. Finally, after a lapse of choke-inducing greetings, Ed was finally released long enough to let a flustered growl out. "All right, now that we're here, can someone please tell me what was so important that we had to come urgently?" A moment of silence fell on the group as Hughes and Armstrong passed rather uneasy glances to one another. Finally, Hughes turned to the two young alchemists with stupid, sheepish smile. "Well fellas, to be perfectly honest, we don't really know." Scowling, Ed growled. "You mean to tell me we came all this way for nothing?" Lifting his hand with the intention of easing, Armstrong chuckled. No. You and your brother definitely were brought back for a reason, young Edward. Unfortunately, we cannot give you explicit details on the reasons for your return due to the fact that we have not yet been debriefed ourselves." Lowering his hands and folding them behind his back, Armstrong turned diligently toward Hughes. "We have simply been instructed to take you to a disclosed location where we all will be debriefed." Looking to one another, the Elric brothers were, admittedly, a bit surprised. After all, what could be so important that neither a qualified state alchemist, and or a member of the military's intelligence division would not be allowed to know right away? Hughes of all people should have had some insight into what was presently going on. Instead, he appeared to be just as in the dark as Armstrong. Shifting his glance once again to his watch, Hughes cringed and gazed to everyone presently in the party. "All right, we will have plenty of time for catching up later. Right now, we really need to get you boys to the disclosed location. It's bad enough that we're already close to 45 minutes late." Watching Hughes leave, Al looked to Ed and whispered, "Whatever is going on really must be important." Looked up at Al, Ed raised an eyebrow. "Why do you say that?" Looking at Hughes, who was getting in the car, Al laughed softly. "Because he hasn't once mentioned his daughter since we got off the train." As the car pulled to a slow stop, both boys were a bit shocked as well as disturbed by the military's choice for a disclosed location. What used to be Fifth Laboratory was in fact their disclosed location. Though to the two boys thought this place was to be abandoned after their run-in with chimeras, it was in fact rejuvenated to continue in military research and development, specifying in subjects unknown and unavailable to public access. "Why the hell are we back here? What kind of sick joke is this?" Turning in the driver's seat to meet Edward's gaze, Hughes chuckled. "Didn't anyone tell you, after you two had your escapade in here, the military thought to put it to better use and turn it into an extended branch for research and development?" Sitting forward slightly, Alphonse asked rather innocently. "Research and development for what exactly?" Also turning around, Armstrong sighed. "That is what we are here to find out." As everyone exited the vehicle and were escorted inside by guards already present outside waiting for them, both Ed and Al couldn't shake the uneasy feeling caused by a severe case of déjà vu. But what met them inside, they never could have seen coming. The entire complex was teeming with people doing so many different things all at once. In comparison, it was like an enormous beehive of human beings, all trying to do their assigned tasks in a confined space, as so to ensure that in the grand scheme of things, everything worked and performed as planned. Moving through to an elevator shaft, Hughes ushered Edward and Alphonse to follow him in. Stepping inside with Armstrong stepping inside behind them, Al looked around. "So how far up do we go from here?" Hughes smiled. "We're not going up." Hitting the main control, the cage box slowly started to descend beneath the floor down a long dark shaft until after a few moments slowly came to a halt. After opening the cage door, all four of them were suddenly in awe at the sight that befell them. The room, was massive. But had to be in order to accompany the crown jewel that lay in wait in front of them. A massive ring forged of metal with sophisticated, ornate design stood erect against the cavern wall. Its structure still partially buried in rock and earth. Its design nothing that they nor any human being had ever seen before. Slowly exiting the elevator, Al took in the scene with utmost awe. What is this? That, my dear boy, is exactly what myself and a team of scientists and archaeologists are trying to find out. Pulled away from the site, both Alphonse and Edward's attentions were drawn to an older gentleman in his late 40s standing with Lieutenant Colonel Mustang. Holding his hand out to Alphonse, the man beamed with sheer delight. His gray and snowy white mustache gleaming in the overhead lights. Dr. Edgar J. Ramble. I'm the scientist currently in charge of this little project. And you must be the Fullmetal Alchemist. I must say, it is quite a treat to finally meet you in person. After politely shaking the doctor's hand, Alphonse gestured to Edward. Oh, I'm not the Fullmetal Alchemist. He is. After pointing to Edward, Al could tell that Ed was very unpleased. Not that the mix-up is anything out of the ordinary. Heck, it happened quite often. Still, it irked Edward something fierce. With a look of embarrassment and some shock, Dr. Ramble scrambled. Oh my goodness. Turning to meet Ed's gaze, the doctor sighed half-heartedly. I am so sorry, my dear boy. Though perhaps since this young man was in the suit of metal that he was. Waving it off dissuasively, Ed huffed. It's fine, really. Now please, can someone just tell me why we're here? Jumping at the chance to move away from the embarrassing mix-up, Dr. Ramble turned and gestured to the large ring. You two are here because of this. Moving to clean his glasses with his lab coat, Dr. Ramble chuckled. It's ironic actually. We didn't find out we'd need the abilities you two possess until a short time ago after an accident occurred on the excavation floor. An alchemist was using his abilities to clear rock when he accidentally touched the ring and sparked a chain reaction. Ed, looking between the doctor and the ring, finally had a look of interest upon him. What kind of reaction exactly? The doctor, pleased at Edward's interest, beamed. Oh, it was truly a spectacular sight. The ring lit up in an amazing display of blue and green strands of light. No, I can't even call it that. It was more like raw energy being emitting from the outside of the ring being pulled inside by some sort of invisible force. The ring was making a horrible scraping noise, I suppose is how I would describe it. Anyway, it sounded as though the metal interior of the device itself was moving and shifting from within. Kind of like the cogs in a clock, or the pistons in a car. It truly was an amazing sight. But what's even more amazing is that this all lasted but a few seconds. Shortly after the alchemist touched it, he pulled his hand away and the device shut down. No one, not even the alchemist who initially activated it, has been able to activate it since. Looking at each other, both Ed and Al gazed with a dumbfounded look. Ed managed to choke out a laugh. So what do you want us to do? Dr. Ramble, bowing his head respectfully, smiled. I've heard many things about you boys and how you've been able to do things that other alchemists cannot do. You have talents that I believe surpass others, and I truly believe you can help us discover just what exactly this device is, as well as what it can do. Again, both Ed and Al passed a glance to one another before Ed looked at the doctor. A smile beaming from one ear to the other. Doc, if anyone can help you get this thing running, it's us. Clasping his hands together before grabbing both boys by the shoulders, the doctor beamed with even more delight than before. That is most excellent news. I am so happy and relieved to hear that you boys are willing and able to help with this project. I'm sure a breakthrough is well within reach now, and the Führer himself will be most pleased. As their talking faded into the distance, a shadow lay draped over the top of the ring, and two eyes peered out, watching. Waiting. Can I eat them while lust? Huh? Can I? Can I? Watching the scene below, watching the Fullmetal Alchemist disappear into the elevator shaft with others around him, a tall slender figure laughed softly. Her feminine voice silky, and easy in comparison to her companion. No gluttony. Not yet. Remember, Father has plans for those two. plans we cannot interfere with. Looking up with disappointment, the round dark figures sulked. Will I ever get to eat them? The slender figure, Lust, laughed softly. Perhaps, for now. We need to be patient. And wait until the time is right. Well, that's the ending of that chapter. I do hope you enjoy this video. If you like to see more, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment down below. Until next time.